My spider senses are tingling. Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. Biggest event of the year for me is finally here. There's a lot to talk about, like I mentioned in my little video, my reaction that I did, right out of the theater. A lot of things I want to say about this film. And I just honestly figured, just because, our Christmas is coming up this week, things are, going to be kind of like busy. This is going to have spoilers in the video. The beginning, I'm going to give you guys like the synopsis of the movie. Without going into spoilers, I will give you guys my, my overall score, what I thought of the film. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and we are going to talk all things spoilers with this movie. So just a heads up, if you guys want to watch just the beginning of the video, then come back, after you've seen the movie, watch the rest of it, to talk about spoilers and what I kind of, I thought about, certain things that happened in the movie, come back afterwards. But I just want to give you guys that fair warning because I know for me, I was able to see it Thursday. I saw it again, yesterday, Friday, and I know a lot of people, didn't have that chance, haven't had a chance to see it yet. So we're giving you guys a fair warning. But if you've already seen the movie or if you just don't care and you want to get spoiled, we're going to be talking about plenty of that stuff here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk Spider-Man No Way Home. So Spider-Man No Way Home takes place after the events of Spider-Man Far From Home, obviously, where at the end of that movie, and spoilers for that movie if for some reason you haven't seen that film yet, but at the end of it, Mysterio exposes Peter's secret to the world that he is Spider-Man. So, this movie opens up and we find out, which is in the trailers, it's not a spoiler, but we find out, everyone finds out that he is Spider-Man. And obviously that has a big, ripple effect on a lot of people. So shit gets crazy really quick with this movie. And so, Peter, he ends up going to Doctor Strange and he's like, hey, can you create a spell to make it so that everyone, forgets that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And, of course, so he goes to do that. Things go wrong with the spell because Peter is like, wait, no, I gotta make sure MJ, still remembers, my Aunt May still remembers Ned. And in the trailer, you see things go crazy. So that gets messed up, of course. And Peter accidentally unleashes a bunch of other Spider-Man villains from other universes. They come here and him and Doctor Strange, they have to figure out a way to send these guys back. So that is the basic, plot, the idea of Spider-Man No Way Home without going into any spoilers because, like I said, that stuff is in the trailers. So you guys, you've seen that. Won't go into any more detail. Just as far as an overall score for this movie, and, I'll talk about it a little bit at the end of this review as well once I'm doing the spoilers. But man, it was just so cool to be, I've been back to the theaters for a while now, but this was we haven't had a big event movie like this since we had, Endgame, really. So it was just, I was disappointed. I didn't get to go see this down in the Jordan's IMAX where, I've seen a lot of those, those big movies the past several years. But that's been closed since the pandemic has started, which, it really sucks. So I hope they open up next year. But it was just a lot of fun. I went with a bunch of my friends. Theater was packed, opening night when I saw it on Thursday was packed again when I saw it in IMAX, last night as well. So it was so cool to see all the people there, all the fans. There was people dressed as Spider-Man. Everyone was just having a lot of fun. And the reactions throughout the film, it just added so much to it. So for this movie, I'll tell you guys that overall as a score, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. It's definitely one of my favorite films of the year, one of the biggest blockbusters. And if you guys, obviously if you're a Marvel fan, if you're a Spider-Man fan, I think that you're going to be pretty satisfied with what happens. So that's all I'm going to say as far as that goes, because again, if you guys haven't seen it, we're going to be talking about spoilers now. So this is your fair warning to check out of the video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk all things No Way Home.
Hello, Peter.
First off, we just got to talk about the level of hype for this film has been absolutely insane, ever since this movie was announced. both of the other Spider-Man films, a lot of people, have really liked those pretty, universally. there hasn't really been a lot of complaints as far as the first two films go. So just naturally having that third film, people were excited to see this in the first place. But then all of these different rumors, started flying around about who could like possibly show up in this movie and what's going to happen. And the hype really, started to build, especially when, we found out, we heard the rumors of like, the villains that were going to be in the film. That was kind of, like first thing. And we saw them in the trailer eventually. And it just like, it brought that like hype level up to like the next level. And then of course, we got the rumors that, Tobey, Maguire, and Andrew Garfield were going to be in this movie possibly. And that just kind of like blew things through the roof. So that's been the topic of conversation for the past, couple years or whatever, while they've been working on this movie. And so anytime you have a film that just has this level of hype, and I mean, I'm definitely going to admit, I let myself get caught up in it. But you always run that risk of going to see a film like this. You have, so much expectations. Run the risk of, you think certain things are going to happen, and if they don't, you might be slightly disappointed. As far as does this live up to the hype, I think it really does. Like, it might not be quite on the level of, like, Infinity War or Endgame, because I think those are still definitely a little bit, higher for me overall. But it's pretty close. Like, this was a huge event, for a Marvel movie, for a Spider-Man movie. And, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about all those things here right now.
You're not Peter Parker.
So first, we'll talk about the villains in the movie. So like I said, when they first kind of, brought up the idea that, some of the villains from the other Spider-Man movies were going to be in No Way Home, initially, me and a lot of other people was like, no way that's going to happen. Especially, like Jamie Foxx as Electro. Never thought we're going to see that again. Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. You see the Lizard. You see Sandman. It was just like, that's no way that's going to happen. And sure enough, we got the trailer. You got to see all of them in there. And it was just like, holy fucking shit. Like, they're actually doing this. So that was really cool. I would say, as far as the villains go, for me, personally, I think, Doc Ock, Alfred Molina, and then Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, those two are definitely the standouts for me in this film. I feel like they kind of had, like, the most to do, which makes sense, because they're, out of, like, those group of characters, definitely the more, iconic, I would say, like, out of that group at least. So they were definitely, like, highlights for me overall. With Doc Ock, we get to see him. He's like, one of the first villains that, shows up in the film. You saw that kind of bit like in the trailer when they're on like the freeway or whatever. And he fights Peter in the movie, Tom Holland. And like that whole fight sequence, I thought that was really, really well done. I love that. And then, he ends up realizing, he's like, hey, wait a second, you're not the Peter Parker that I know. So just that, that whole interaction, Peter Parker, or I'm going to say Tom Holland, just to make things a little, less like confusing, for later on. But yeah, Tom Holland, his Peter Parker, he has no idea what's going on, because he's like, I don't know who the hell this guy is, why he's coming after me. I really liked, especially the fight between, Doc Ock, obviously with like, his, with his arms, and then, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, where he has the spider legs like as well. That whole thing was really cool. And then Willem Dafoe, though, in this movie, guys, I mean, he's obviously, he's a great actor, but man, him coming back as Green Goblin in this movie, he just absolutely killed it. And I saw like an interview, I guess, that came out recently, that I guess he only agreed to come back in this film if he got to do a lot of his like own stunts and fights, and was going to have a pretty big presence in this movie. He didn't just want it to be a cameo, and by no means, none of these villains are cameos. I thought they all got a good amount of screen time, but him coming back, there were moments in this movie where he was like legit actually kind of scary. Like there was levels where I was like, holy shit. And you actually, so initially when you see him, he has like the mask, and that was cool, to see that come back. But that ends up getting broken, and for like the rest of the movie, it's just like, Willem Dafoe's like face. But just the way that he was able to contort it, and just, some of the times where he was interacting with Peter and different people, it was just really creepy. So I thought that he was fantastic in this movie, and you really felt like these guys were a threat, which is like one of the biggest things or biggest compliments I feel like I could give, this movie is just, you really felt that, shit could like go down. There was a lot of, potential consequences that could happen. And not even just like the interaction, like the villains, interacting with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. I just love the interactions between the villains themselves, because, some of them obviously know each other from the films, but then, you have the ones from like Andrew Garfield's, movies, you have Tobey Maguire's, and them just kind of going like back and forth. That was just so cool to see as a Spider-Man fan, as a Marvel fan, comic book fan overall. So I just really love those interactions. So the second thing we're going to talk about, probably the thing that most people, were kind of wondering going into this movie. There have been the rumors that, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, were they going to be in this film? Were they not going to be in this film? What was going to happen? A lot of us kind of had the feeling that they were going to, but obviously, everyone was kind of, denying it, even though there was different, things like pictures and stuff showing up. So are they in the film? Yes. You get to see both of those guys come back. And again, it's not just like short little cameos where they're back for a second. They both, they get a pretty significant amount of screen time in this movie. So I was definitely happy with their appearances. When both of them, because they kind of, they show up like separately. When both of them showed up, I can tell you guys, at least for me, both the times that I've seen this movie, the crowd went absolutely fucking nuts. And, myself included. It was just, you couldn't believe that you were seeing, these guys coming back, to the Spider-Man universe. So that was just so cool. Like, there's definitely a lot of fan service in this movie, but I think it's the right kind of fan service, because it does play into the story. It isn't just there to be there, because there's movies that, that do that sometimes, and obviously that kind of feels cheap, but I feel like this worked with the story, like overall, and they had a big role to play. It wasn't just a short little cameo like, oh look, Andrew and Tobey, like they're here, whatever, for a second, bye. No, they were here for quite a while. We got to see the 3 Spider-Men, the meme. I thought that was hilarious. A lot of people were hoping they were going to do that. You get to see that in the film. Another interaction between them, which I thought was great, was just that the fact that Tobey, he can shoot the spider webs like it comes out of him, where Andrew and Tom Holland, they have like, the web shooters or whatever, and they were just like blown away. They're like, what? Like that comes out of you? So just that whole interaction, that was hilarious. So yeah, you get a lot of great stuff with the 3 Peter Parkers in this movie. And you also get to, one of my other favorite things with them too, is that you get to see them at one point. They're in like a lab like area where they're all kind of working on the different cures, for the villains to try and fix them so they can send them back to their worlds, like later on. And I just really love that setting, because I feel like, more so with like Andrew, but you didn't get to really see, Peter Parker kind of being in like a scientist, like lab-like setting. So for me, that was really cool, just getting to see those characters do that for that scene right there. But yeah, you can't say enough. Just like seeing those 3 on the screen together for the amount of time that you get to see them was just so freaking cool. Definitely one of those, those big movie moments that I will, always remember for sure. And I gotta bring up that as far as like Tom Holland goes, his Spider-Man, he deals with a lot of shit in this movie. There's a lot of growth with his character in this film. I felt like, with all the things that's going on just in this movie, the world finds out that he, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So not only does that, put him at risk, but it also affects his girlfriend, his friends, his family, and just like the repercussions it has against them. He accidentally unleashes all of these, villains in the world, has to try and find a way to put them back, where they belong. So there's definitely a lot going on here for him. And I feel like out of this trilogy of Spider-Man movies that, we've got like right now, this for me is definitely by far the darkest of those movies. Like I kind of mentioned it earlier, you definitely feel like there's a lot at stake here in this movie, which I really appreciated. I like Far From Home, I like Homecoming, but I kind of miss that aspect from, the other Spider-Man movies where, you felt like things could really happen. People could get hurt, and they brought that back definitely in No Way Home. So you felt like anything can happen to people at any time, so you're kind of like on the edge of your seat. As far as like MJ and Ned goes, I think they were both, you know, really good in this movie as well. I really liked, I've always, you know, from the beginning of this trilogy, I've liked MJ, her character, you know, her being a little weird. I don't know, I guess I'm like just attracted to kind of weird characters, so I really liked her throughout these movies, and I think they did a good job of, you know, really building upon that, you know, the relationship between her and Peter in this movie, so you really care about, you know, those characters and don't want anything to happen to them. And then, you know, Ned, once again, he kind of plays like the comic relief, you know, throughout these movies, but I think, you know, specifically in No Way Home, there was a lot of hints dropped that of the potential future of what they might do with Ned. I honestly think they're setting him up to, you know, be a villain like in the future, and possibly Hobgoblin. There was like one particular sequence when they were in the lab and he was talking to Andrew and Tobey, and, you know, that he asked them if they had a best friend, and Tobey, you know, he mentions, is like, oh yeah, he did, like, he tried to kill me, he died in his arms. And then Ned goes to Tom Holland's, like, Peter Parker, and he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to become a supervillain and kill you. There was just little, and like, I know that's just kind of like the parallel between those two characters, so it could be nothing. But there was other little things throughout the film, too, that I just felt like they're kind of laying the breadcrumbs for that character. There's been rumors of it, too, you know, outside, so I feel like that's probably where they're going with that character, but I want to hear, you know, your thoughts too, so definitely let me know as far as what you think they're going to do with the Ned character moving forward. As far as the character of Aunt May goes, so, yeah. So she, in this movie, she's the one who ends up giving Tom Holland, you know, Peter Parker, the with great power comes, you know, great responsibility speech after this big showdown between him and Green Goblin, and she ends up dying. Green Goblin is the one who he ends up killing her, and that whole sequence, I'm getting chills just like talking about it right now. But that whole sequence was so well done, you know, especially the fight between Willem Dafoe and Tom Holland. Amazing stuff there. It was really brutal. You know, they're smashing through walls and things like that. And then when, you know, you saw his glider go outside of the building, and I was like, oh shit, they're going to kill Aunt May here. And sure enough, comes in, hits her. You know, she doesn't die like right away. You know, she basically ends up dying in Peter's arms, and just like the acting from Tom Holland there was so great. It made me tear up. That was one of the moments in the movie where like I definitely teared up there. You just, you know, you felt so bad for him, just like, you know, in the other Spider-Man movies with Uncle Ben and, you know, Gwen Stacy and stuff like that. So it was definitely one of the emotional bits for sure. But yeah, I mean, Willem Dafoe, like another instance of him just being like, you know, really creepy and nasty and terrifying at times. So that scene was one of my favorite scenes like in the movie. And after Aunt May dies, that's actually when Tobey, so kind of going back or whatever, but when Tobey and Andrew end up meeting Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and, you know, he's obviously, he's broken, you know, he's just lost his aunt. He only has, you know, MJ and Ned really left. And so he's just kind of feeling alone, and they go and talk to him and just kind of explain what they've gone through, you know, losing Uncle Ben, losing, you know, Gwen Stacy, and just like having that moment to connect with those three guys. I thought that was another highlight, you know, one of the best scenes from the movie for me for sure. And then I can't forget one of the scenes pretty early on in the movie, something that I was kind of expecting from early on when we saw like the first trailer. But it is official. We have Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, in the MCU now, which is so cool just to see them, you know, coming over from the Netflix shows. Granted, we don't know if this is like 100% the same Daredevil, you know, obviously it's the same actor, but we don't know if like maybe it's going to be slightly different than how they were set up in the Netflix shows. But it was just really cool to see Charlie Cox, you know, playing Matt Murdock, and then when that brick comes through the window, he catches the brick, and you can see, you know, Tom Holland and everybody was just kind of like, how the hell did you do that? So that got a big reaction from the audience, like, as well. And during the movie, you find out, you know, Doctor Strange, he's trying to send these villains back to their correct timeline, so that way it can, you know, reset everything, fix everything, so, you know, shit isn't going crazy anymore. But obviously with them going back, some of those villains, they're going to end up dying because they end up dying by Spider-Man in these other, worlds. And Tom Holland, he finds that out. The villains, they realize that they don't want to go back there and die. And, Tom Holland, he feels bad. He doesn't want these guys to die as well. So he wants to try and come up with a way to fix it so that way they can go back and they don't end up dying by Spider-Man in those worlds. So obviously there's a big conflict between him and Doctor Strange. They have a really cool fight where they end up going to like the Mirrorverse. That was another awesome scene in this movie. Love the battle between those two. And Tom Holland, he ends up, outsmarting Doctor Strange, which I thought that was really cool. So love that whole sequence as well. Eventually, the movie, it starts to kind of, come to, it's in the third act. Things start to, culminate. And you end up getting the big, fight scene between the three Spider-Men and the villains. The Spider-Men, they're trying to cure the villains. They're, to send them back to their universes. And obviously the villains, they don't want to go back. So there's this big fight, at the Statue of Liberty. You have this big, scaffold around the whole thing. And at one point, it was really funny because you have Tom Holland. He's like, hey guys, we have to work together. I've been on a team. I'm part of the Avengers. And both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were like, what is that? Because they don't have the Avengers in those universes. So that whole interaction, that was great. Just getting to, see them at one point, they all jump on different parts of, the building. You see them kind of lined up. Super cool shot right there. And, of course, in the trailer, which I kind of thought seeing it where you see the lizard's head get kicked. Obviously, yeah, they digitally removed the other Spider-Man. So you have the three Spider-Men fighting the villains right there. So, this whole scene was super cool. And, which another thing you see in the trailer, you see at one point the building, collapses because of I believe it was one of Green Goblin's bombs going off. So it blows up everything. The shield from the Statue of Liberty, that comes down, crashing down. MJ's up there, and of course, she falls off the building. You see her falling down, and, Tom Holland, he goes to try and save her. And it looks like he's going to in the trailer, but then Green Goblin comes by, gets him. Oh, man, and I just remember, being in the theater that opening night, and when that happened and he got taken away, you could just, there was a couple people I saw in the theater, no lie, got up and were standing up there. You're like, you better save him! And then, sure enough, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man ends up saving MJ, so he gets his redemption arc. That, oh man, again, I'm getting goosebumps. Again, just one of my favorite scenes from the film. It was just so cool, especially with me. I actually just saw The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 recently for the first time. I had put off seeing those movies for a while just because I thought they did that, so close to the original Spider-Man that I was like, I didn't really have any interest at the time. But before going to see No Way Home, I did a marathon of all the Spider-Man movies. So it was still pretty fresh for, I knew Gwen Stacy had died because, obviously the movie came out a while ago. But seeing that and then seeing No Way Home, the same day, because I literally saw Amazing Spider-Man 2 finish that up right before I saw No Way Home. So that was fresh. So that was another moment, just seeing Andrew Garfield, him standing there holding MJ, he starts crying. I started crying. I feel like everyone in the theater started crying. That was just, it was such a beautiful moment that he got that, that redemption moment there. And then you get, Tom Holland's Peter Parker. He ends up facing off against Green Goblin for the last time. They end up having a pretty good fight there. And, they're going back and forth. And it's pretty brutal. Tom Holland, looks like he's going to kill, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Looks like he's going to kill him. He picks up his blade. He's about to stab him. And then sure enough, Tobey Maguire, he comes down, stops him. He's looking at him in the eyes. And I knew right there, I was like, son of a bitch. They are going to kill Tobey Maguire. And sure enough, Willem Dafoe, he stabs him. You hear, the thing go through him. And I was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me right now. I was so mad for a second there. And you could tell, people in the audience were like, no way. They're killing Tobey Maguire's character. He ends up surviving, so thank God for that. But that moment was just like, holy shit. So when I talk about, it definitely felt like there was a lot at stake here. Just different things like that. You didn't think that really anybody was safe in this movie. So even though I was mad for a second, definitely added to the film, like overall, great kind of way to start wrapping things up. And, Goblin, he ended up, before kind of that last fight, he ends up, you see like one of his bombs end up blowing like the box that Strange had that had the spell that he originally had tried casting, but, Peter screwed it up, so he put it in this box to try and contain it. He blows that up, so you see, all the multiverses. They're kind of like shit's going crazy, and that you get that scene from the trailer where Strange is like, I can't hold them back much longer. They're starting to come through. So Peter makes the tough decision to, he tells Strange, he's like, hey, are you able to cast another spell? And this time making it so that everyone forgets that, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And, Strange is like, yeah, no, I can do that. He's obviously hesitant, he feels bad. And he tells Peter that, if he does this, that no one's going to remember who Peter Parker is. Literally everybody. Him, MJ, Ned, and, Tom Holland, he makes the decision to do that because otherwise, these people are going to come through from the other worlds and who knows, like, what have happened, like, at that point. So he makes that tough decision. He says goodbye to MJ and Ned. That was a really emotional moment. And, the film ends up, like, wrapping up and, he finds MJ and Ned. They obviously, they don't remember who he is, and it's just like, oh man. So literally the movie ends with him basically, being like alone. He's by himself, and you see him, he swings off into, like New York City, but he's like, has his own apartment and everything, but he's literally by himself. So it's definitely, I'm curious to see, I feel like they're definitely setting him up to kind of go do like, the Sonyverse or Sony Spider-Man verse movies. They might kind of do some of those. They did just announce that they are doing another Marvel Spider-Man movie with Sony, so we know that that's coming like later down the in the line, so we don't have to kind of like wait like last time where we weren't sure what's going to happen. But yeah, I think that was kind of their way. It's like, oh, he's going to go do his thing in the Sonyverse, and then he'll come back, and that'll be a another like big moment, like where he comes back to the MCU like officially. So that's how things kind of wrap up as far as the movie goes. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there was like a couple things here and there, like some of the comedy overall really worked for me, but there was definitely some jokes that like fell a little flat for me. But yeah, I mean, overall, I had so much fun with Spider-Man No Way Home. Again, it was just one of those big event movies that I wasn't sure if we were going to get, or how long it was going to take to get one of those movies after we got Infinity War and Endgame. We had to wait a couple years, but we got another one here. It's, it's not quite on that level, but it's definitely pretty damn close. So much fun just seeing all these characters come back, and they are able to do it in a way that didn't feel convoluted because, obviously with like the original Spider-Man 3, they had a bunch of characters. They had more characters here, but they were able to fit it into the story so it made sense and everyone got a good amount of screen time, fit into the story naturally. Yeah, I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. I think that if you're a fan of Spider-Man, if you're a fan of the MCU, you guys are going to love this like as well. So again, my score for the movie is a 9 out of 10. And obviously there's 2 post-credit scenes in this movie. It still blows my mind when I see people leaving, like at the end of the movie before the credit scenes. I'm just like, how long have you been a Marvel fan? I'm just like, do you not know what's happening? There's always end credit scenes. Stay literally to the end. So the first like post-credit scene is having to deal with Tom Hardy and Venom, which I kind of thought he was going to be in this movie before that, but we end up seeing him and he's at like a bar talking to this guy, and he mentions like Iron Man, the Hulk, and Thanos and different things, and but then he ends up getting, with the spell sending everyone back to their their different worlds, he ends up getting sent back, which kind of confused me because we do end up seeing a little bit of the Venom symbiote is like left on the table. Initially, that scene kind of confused me because I was like, what was the point of, having that scene at the end of Venom 2 where it's like, oh, Venom came into like the MCU. I was like, cool. Now he's going to, cross over, with Spider-Man. He's going to come into the MCU. But then he just kind of gets sent back. I know they left the symbiote there. So I don't know, are they going to have the symbiote take over another character, like another person besides like Tom Hardy? Is there just going to be another variant of Tom Hardy, like maybe in this world that exists? Maybe they'll do that. if I'm missing something, because I don't know a lot of the history about like Venom and stuff like that. So if there's another character that they're setting up, I would love for you guys to tell me, because honestly, I'm not going to bullshit you guys and say that I know. So let me know down below in the comments what you think is going to happen as far as that goes. And then the last post-credit scene is actually a trailer that we got for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which I kind of actually knew ahead of time. I knew that the trailer was there. I didn't see it. But, oh, I'm so excited for that. You know, getting to see Wanda again, Scarlet Witch. They make it seem like she's not the villain in this movie, or at least one of the villains, which I kind of thought that's what they were going to do. But I don't know. Maybe the trailer's kind of misleading, but really, really excited for that. And that's coming this next year. We got some great Marvel movies to look forward in 2022. So, oh man. Yeah, this video is pretty long because there's a lot of stuff to talk about in this movie. As you can tell, I had so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really helps me out. It helps the channel out. So appreciate that, guys. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.